Welcome to the Down Dog Athletics Podcast, a competitor's guide to mental health and mastery, your resource for conversations around mental health and the mindsets necessary to master every area of your life. My name is Paul Klingen, and I'm a former Division I athlete that struggled with my mental health until I started yoga, which opened me up to other practices that gave me a balanced approach to my physical and mental health. The goal of this podcast is to inspire others to do the same, train and compete like an athlete, while also having the ability to slow down and practice stillness. When you can do both, you find balance and evolve into a greater version of yourself. What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are all having a great day so far. Welcome to the Down Dog Athletics Podcast. I got an awesome guest for everyone today, someone that I've looked up to for a long time. I've followed his content, read his books, and he's been someone that really encourages me to go harder, to push further, to do more with my life, and he's really just an inspiring dude. But before I get to the meat and potatoes of him and today's podcast, a few things that I want to point you in the direction of. One is going to be my 28-day plan that has been updated, version 2.0. What is this update? It's going to be a training and yoga plan that fuses the two together, whether you want to do yoga and train 3 days each week, or you want to do maybe 5 training days and 2 days. Maybe you want to do 4 training days and 2 yoga days. I've got 3 different programs available in that download. You'll get 19 pages of different content around training, nutrition, different mindfulness techniques with meditation and journaling, and then you're going to have this really full built out Google Doc that also gives you the ability to customize the program to yourself. How many times have you gone to the gym and you got bench press or you got squat or you got this specific workout you think you're going to do and you've been planning on it all day, and then you go to the squat rack and someone's there. Someone is sitting in your squat rack doing barbell curls, and it's the worst thing ever, and you got to wait for 20 minutes. Well, what's really great about this is I've built it so that it's training movement patterns first. And so it gives you the drop-down ability to go and say, hey, barbell bench press isn't available, squat isn't available, deadlift isn't available. Let me find a different version that requires different equipment, or maybe is at a different skill level, and so you're able to select that drop-down, and there's going to be anywhere from 5 to 12 different exercises that you can select from and give you the ability to progress that specific workout for that day. The second thing that I've added is full-length yoga videos. So in the previous 28-day plan, version 1.0, you had some short 2 to 5 minute flows that you could follow. These ones have audio included where I'm mic'd up, voiced over, and it's anywhere from 10 to 15 minute length ones that you can do if you're short on time, and then it also will do 30 to 40 minutes if you got a little bit more time and want to do something like open up your hips. I got a yoga for runners worked out in there, and it's all really good stuff. Got really good feedback on it, and I'm really excited for it to be out. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go download the 28-day plan. I've had hundreds of people download it, had a lot of people have a lot of success with it, and I'm really excited to have it out. It's showing my evolution as a coach, as a trainer, as a yoga instructor, and I'm just excited because it's going to help so many more people, and it's going to be customizable to whatever it is that your skill level is, or whatever weight that you have available for that specific day. So today's guest is Tommy Baker, and you might know him as Tommy Resist Average on social media. You can go to his website, Resist Average Academy. He is a podcast host, an author of 3 different books, and a coach to high-level entrepreneurs and other business coaches, someone that I've looked up to a long time. Recently read his audiobook, The 1% Rule, and I'll be blunt, the book is for people that have taken that leap but really need that little extra push, those people who haven't yet turned pro in whatever it is that they're doing, and they need to take that mindset of it's not about achieving every single day. The achievement is in the process and falling in love with that process, and if you can get 1% better every single day, you're eventually going to get there. But if you're focused on hitting the next milestone, you'll never get there because you're going to be let down, really. And so much about social media, and I think about growing up watching SportsCenter, it's always the top 10. It's always the highlights. You don't see the 1-2 count and it's a ball and all these things that people don't show but is 100% a part of the process and 100% required for you to fail, for you to grow, and for you to evolve. And his book really gave me a sense of urgency. Like, I'm 29, I'm young, but some people that's old. Wherever you're at, like, go do it. There's no time to wait. Go get 1% better every day. And if you just focus on that process, you're going to find that you get so much further than if you're worried about trying to lose 20 pounds in one day or trying to grow your business 2x in 2 months. It's going to take time, but if you fall in love with that process, it's going to be a much more enjoyable journey. And he does such a better job about talking about things, whether it's his books or his philosophies and his mindset. Really, what I would put in the mental mastery category for this podcast. We talk a lot about mental health. This guy's a wealth of knowledge, of resource on how to get your mind right. So, without further ado, here we go, Tommy Baker. What's up, Tommy? I'm so excited to have you on today. I've been following you for a few years now, and you've already made a big impact on me just in the content that you provide. So I'm super excited to be able to sit down and talk to you. How's it going?
Absolutely, man. Fired up, and congrats for getting this off the ground and getting started and producing your own value, man. Because that's always, when you're on the other side, for me, I've paid it forward because so many people have impacted me.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with you. And I love seeing people take action, courageous action like you're doing.
Yeah. I'm not by any means a musical person, but I got to believe this is kind of what it feels like, where you're just like, man, I just got to like sit in the studio and create and create and create. And that momentum and that energy that you create is going to down the road create ripple effects. And so kind of what you're talking about, where it's like paying it forward and all that stuff. So super appreciative of you doing that for me.
Anytime, man. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. So I guess the best way to describe you from my perspective is just transformer. As soon as I say that, I'm like, I think of the big movie and like a giant transformer. But you do that for so many people, thousands of people. And I really, before I want to get into how you do that and kind of your pillars and the different principles that you apply, I'd love to hear kind of your transformation, just because I love the idea of a leader leading from the front, and you definitely do that in your content and how you live your life. But I'm sure at some point there was something before Resist Average Academy, and I want to hear that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I deeply appreciate that acknowledgement. And to do the work that I do on a daily basis and have the conversations that I'm having on a daily basis, like, it starts with self-preservation. It starts with solving my own pain. And specifically, my own pain was a pain of not feeling like I belonged anywhere. I moved all over the place. I moved all over the world. I grew up in South America. I grew up in the East Coast, up and down. Never really felt like I had a stable foundation. So I spent a lot of time in solitude, growing up alone, confused, not fitting in. And while challenging at the time, it allowed me to get to know myself at a young age and start asking some of those questions that we all ask that we usually tend to avoid, which is, who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of this? What does this all mean, really? Those deep existential questions. And that led me down a journey of really just radical self-discovery, growing myself first physically. I really followed Maslow's hierarchy to a T of like, hey, let me go deep into my physicality and see what lessons I can extract from that. Okay, I got that checked off. Let me go mentally. Let me go learn from the world's best teachers and mentors, et cetera, et cetera. Let me learn emotionally about who I am, and then ultimately into like a spiritual realm. And that's been my journey, man. A journey of constant growth, constant transformation, and it's been riveting and it's been fun. It's also been dark and painful. Yeah. For me, I'd rather live on the low ends of the emotional spectrum so I can experience the highs instead of where a lot of people live, where I've lived, which is like in this flatline middle, comfortable ground where you don't have the pull of something greater of growth, but you don't have the intensity of maybe the darkness or the sadness or the breakdowns. And so I'd rather live on the razor's edge. And I know a lot of people out there, they miss that. And that's what we're all here for.
Absolutely. You mentioned traveling around the world. And for me, anytime I've traveled, I find this new level of self-awareness and also gratitude, being able to see like, wow, here's how people in El Salvador live. Here's how people in Greece live. Is that something that you felt like you were finding at that young age? Because to your point, you're spending a lot of time with yourself and in that stillness, which is like one of the things that people hate the most. Like I always think in yoga, or when people are like, all right, sit by yourself in a room with no phone, no beer in hand, and people are like, wait, totally. What? And so you're doing that at such a young age. Gotta believe that leads to like a greater level of self-awareness, just how great, and in gratitude as well.
Yeah, and travel is I used to say, people used to ask me like, what's the fastest way to grow? And I was like, go pick a country that you don't speak the language and immerse yourself in there, because travel creates radical novelty. And when we experience environments of radical novelty, we don't have that same standard operating procedure of like, this is my identity, these are my patterns, these are my behaviors, because you're in a completely different world. And it's so invigorating. And also, like you said, a large part of my childhood was spent in Colombia. Totally different level of gratitude, right? You go to the mall, and on your way to the mall, you're seeing paramilitary, you're seeing amputees all over the place. Even at the mall, there's this tension. There's guards with AK-47s, and it's a different world. And that, when I came back to the States, I was like, oh, we are actually pretty blessed and lucky over here.
Yeah.
There's not like this constant state of, down there was just a lot of terrorism. So anything could go wrong at any moment. And you were always kind of in the state of like, is this safe? Is this safe? Is this safe? And in the States, although there's some of that, it doesn't permeate daily experience for most people. And so gratitude, man, radical novelty from travel and deep gratitude.
Yeah. Is there anything from that, like from your child? What age were you there, I guess? Is a better way to put that.
A total amount of 10 years. It was just back and forth. So
Back
0
and
to
forth.
5, and then about 10 to 15, and a couple more times. Yeah.
Were your parents part of the military, or is there something that was sending you back there?
So we had some family down there, and my dad's business. He focused on Latin America, and so we would just move around. My dad was military too, but that wasn't the reason for it. But just a lot of moving around, man.
Yeah. I love the idea of like radical novelty. And I feel like there's been a real big uptick on retreats where people are able to get that radical novelty and kind of shift up and shake kind of the silt of what their daily routine is. But what's so hard is maintaining that radical novelty, going back into your regular routine. You get back into that environment, back into what you know, and it sets you back into that programming that is that average and that baseline. Do you find, and I want to get into kind of like your coaching pillars, and I'm familiar with like core 4, but I want to get into your coaching pillars where you mentioned the physical, you mentioned the mental. I'm sure there's some level of relationship. For me, the other levels, finances. What are the kind of the 4 pillars, or the pillars that you use in your coaching or in your own life to really start to be like, all right, what are different areas where I need to shake things up?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I see everybody wants to start in business, and I get it. And the financial, but I see that the foundational pillars, like that deep foundation, is the spiritual, is the physical, and is your relationships. So like, for example, it's really hard to be in your complete power as a business owner or an entrepreneur or as a creative if you're having troubles in your relationships, whether that's your relationship with yourself or your closest people. If you're disconnected spiritually and you're like, you don't know who you are, and there's this constant haze. And then obviously if your body's out of whack, like your mind, like if that's not in alignment. And so that I consider the non-negotiable foundation that has to be in place. And of course, when you build a business on a powerful foundation, your ability to turn strategies and tactics into results is 10 times more effective. And so there's a lot of different systems, but maybe like you, I do set targets in 4 areas of life, which is physicality, relationships, business, and spirituality. Depending on the season of my life, one of those might be where I place more of my focus, but the others are going to support that. Yeah. Because I know for me, if I take care of my physicality, my level of clarity is very high. If I take care of my relationships, my ability to focus, like have this conversation right now and not think of literally anything else, and to be as present and humanly possible, is exponential. And so we have to build like traditional goal setting of just like one thing at a time at the expense of everything else. To me, I don't agree with, but building a foundation where everything feeds into each other. That's what creates this like holistic alignment oriented growth.
Yeah. When I think of someone who absolutely crushes it in one area, I always think of Tiger Woods, where he had like the pinnacle of financial or business or career success, but his relationships were so out of whack. And so I think that's an extreme version of how things can really fall apart and crumble if you don't have everything working together. You said something really interesting where you're able to have really good conversations with people in your relationships when you feel kind of like safe and rooted. And I think back to like, you're able to feel comfortable and safe when you're in, groups and tribes. Whereas if you're like an animal and you're kind of isolated, it's really hard to like be focused because you're always kind of on edge. And so when you're working with people that maybe don't have that tribe, I guess, where's the best place to really start? Because I would always say, if I go to jail, I can come out of jail or even in jail, be working on my physicality. So I always feel like that's the first place to start. But your environment and your tribe, like that's really going to give you people to lean on when you don't have the strength yourself. Is there one or the other? Or is it kind of individual?
Yeah, I think, I always say like with people who have struggled with creating change and change that endures, I always say, and the science backs this up, that your environment is the easiest way, the way with less willpower, less friction, that's going to get you the results and the growth and the kind of stasis, like the ability for your environment to lift you up, like you said, to lift you up when things are hard, and to make sure that they're there to support you even when you're in a state of growth. So environment is absolutely crucial. That's always the first domino that I look at with people.
Yeah.
So if somebody says like, hey, I'm like having trouble growing their business, I look at their environments, like where are they actually doing their work? Like what is surrounding their work? What are the quality of their conversations that they're having with people? Like what if I scroll through their phone, or they scroll through their phone because it probably won't let me, but their last 10 text messages, like what's in there? What kind of energy is in there?
Yeah. What are they about?
And, yeah. When we start to look at that, then it's like, okay, well, of course you're lacking clarity in your business, and you're believing that the market is too saturated, or it's too late to launch a podcast, because look at the people that you're hanging out with. So I like to start with environment, and then within that integrate powerful personal habits. And between two of those, even if you're not, you don't even have to be crystal clear, you're going to make progress on your goals and your results.
Yeah. And I think that's where somewhere we're having a mentor, and I'm sure you've had several mentors over the course of your life. You mentioned that, but having someone, if you don't have, so there was a time where I didn't really have millionaire friends that I could call or talk to, but I wanted to be one. And so it's like, all right, I can hire a mentor, I can listen to podcasts, I can read books of people that have those. And in a way, the conversations that I'm having internally are that of having my 5 best friends be millionaires, until you can get to that point where it's like, all right, my entire tribe is like, I'm the dumbest person in that group. And so,
and it's putting yourself in uncomfortable rooms. I'll just tell you something real quick. When I was my most lost, I didn't have any tribe around me. I was like in a state of somewhat victimhood. Like there's no one around me. There, like how can I do it? And then I got serious, and my way of getting serious, because at the time I couldn't really afford much, was I bought an audio tape by Dr. Don DeMartini, and I played it for 476 straight nights, dude. And I went to bed every night with that audio, knowing that it was rewiring my subconscious over and over and over again. Within 6 months, I was thinking and seeing the world differently.
Yeah.
Just from an audio tape. So I believe a lot of people in the space of like wanting to optimize their lifestyle or personal development or entrepreneurship, they say things like, this isn't working. And my question is like, are you working it?
Yeah.
Are you like putting in the reps? Because if you think you're going to listen to one thing, that's why, like for me, when I read books and something latches on, dude, I'll read that thing 10 times.
Yeah.
If I listen to a conversation on a podcast and it connects, I'm going to go repeat to really ingrain that and take it from something that's knowing to doing to something I can actually embody in daily practice.
Yeah. When you're listening to that audio tape, is that something you're falling asleep to, or I'm interested on the science in that. Is that actually rewiring your brain while you're asleep too, or is it just the conscious brain?
No, and a much more powerful level of subconscious, because in those states, and obviously as you drift into sleep, the brain waves you're getting deeper theta, delta brain waves, et cetera. So you're a sponge in those places where your conscious mind can never be so open to those new ideas.
Yeah.
And that radically transformed me. That's why I love flow tanks. I love doing meditations in flow tanks. I'm actually going to do one later today, because it's a deeper way to ingrain that material, to really like tattoo it into who you are. So you wake up the next day and you're shifted. It's not just information.
Yeah.
It's integration.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned not being like, you wouldn't just want to listen to one thing one time or go to a 3-day seminar, but are there times where someone makes that quantum leap, where maybe they go to Date with Destiny, or they have something like a loved one dies, where they are able to just up level just out of necessity, like of survival maybe?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different paths to breakthrough and to growth. What typically happens is that when we lack urgency and we lack clarity and we lack a reminder of our priorities, and we get lost in the day-to-day in the trenches of our life, we tend to wait for a breakdown to come. And, like the breakdown never comes suddenly. I mean, it appears suddenly, but there were a lot of whispers, a lot of reminders along the way. And then finally it's that wake up call. And in my coaching, I always look for three things. Are you open? Are you open to new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of thinking and feeling and being? That's number one. Number two, are you ready? Like, are you truly ready? A lot of people say they're ready. I'm sure you see this all the time. There's a lot of times in my life when I said I was ready, but I wasn't like capital R ready, whatever it takes. And the last thing is, are you willing? And the willingness is the willingness to get uncomfortable, to leave the old identity behind. One of my mentors, Lisa Nichols, she says that, when you transform, and in her story, when she was transforming, she had to let a part of herself die, which was her old identity, which is like, it's not even like a metaphor. It's like, it's part of the ego is dying. And that's really a painful process. You have to be willing for that. And so however you can get to open, ready, and willing, some people wait for a crisis. I don't think that's a great strategy, but if you need a wake up call and that's the wake up call that sets you on the course, then that's great. But I like to choose that conscious growth of, hey, let me seek the challenge today. Let me create the challenge in my life. Let me manufacture the challenge. Let me overcome the resistance today. So I don't have to wait for a challenge, and I can produce the same achievement and fulfillment from seeking the challenge. And then guess what? When a challenge does come, because life is full of curveballs and challenges, I've equipped myself with enough daily resilience and daily practice that challenge isn't going to crumble me. It might put me down for a day, a week, a few weeks, but I'm gonna rise up in resiliency because I've already put in the reps.
Absolutely. I love the "are you willing" thing, because everyone has the ability to like read. I mean, most people have the ability to read or meditate or go to the gym. It's whether or not you are willing. You mentioned people being either at rock bottom or just not, like, you don't have to go through something traumatic in order to make that change. But I always find it's the people that are in the middle, like whether it's middle class or like you're just comfortable, that they don't have anything pushing them out. Whereas you have someone who might have absolutely nothing and they come and work with you and they're open, they're ready, they're willing because they have so many things burning them at the bottom of the barrel. How can someone in the middle class, and I almost look at people in like the upper class too, like they're so comfortable to what they have. As soon as they fall out of that, their identity is like, whoa, we need to get this thermostat back up.
Yeah.
How do you tinker with that as someone who's in middle class and they have the good job, they have the comfortable relationship, they have what the 1950s would have said is a perfect life, but they know that they want more?
Yeah. And I love that because I have a similar just kind of phases of life that I teach, which is like, we got survival on one end, then we have comfort, and then we have a state of thriving. And you're absolutely right. The hardest place to change from is comfort. The person who's in survival, they have no option but to execute. Now survival is exhausting. It doesn't last and leads to burnout and all these issues, but at least you're making moves. You're in action. The problem with comfort, like you said, is that there's nothing on the horizon that's pulling at you. Mm-hmm. We need to have something on the horizon that's the human behavior and psychology is very clear on this. And when we don't have that, life can become mundane, routine, gray, bleak. It can lead to apathy, hopelessness. Not necessarily like deep depression, but just a grayness and a dullness to life. It kind of sucks our life force energy out. So what I do, and when I've been in a comfortable stage, or clients that are in a comfortable stage, I deal with most people that are comfortable in most areas and want to be in a state of thriving, which I believe we're all capable of. And that's where life is. We're on the razor's edge. Like I said earlier, it's like, that's where fulfillment is the breeding ground for fulfillment and achievement and results. So two things on the comfort. One, we get really clear. We take a really clear inventory on where they actually are. Yeah. Because people say in comfort, people will say like things like, "Hey, Valentine, like, things are okay. Things are fine. Things are good." But like that's like a surface area. But once we start to dig deeper in that, we start to realize that, like, good isn't that good. Like they're not like they might have accomplished this level of success and have external validation, but deep down something is missing for them. So we got to be very clear. And so when we take inventory, not from a place of judgment, from a place of truth and radical honesty, then that creates urgency to move again, to take action again, to change a routine or behavior. And then on the other side of that, once we have that, then we can start thinking a little bit bigger of like, okay, well, there's nothing pulling you at the horizon. What is a North Star that we can create that's going to actually compel you, that has an emotional anchor? And between those two worlds, that's how we start to get out of comfort.
Yeah, totally. It reminds me of, you ever follow E.T., hip hop preacher? You know who
Yeah.
that is?
Yeah.
He was like, I don't want to be the gazelle running away from the lion. I want to be the lion chasing the gazelle, because you'll
Yeah.
always work harder towards something you're chasing than being like, oh, I want to avoid uncomfort. And
Exactly.
I was listening to you on another podcast, and you're talking about lighting that match and shining it in the dark places. And I think that is an area where you're conscious and what you can see and what the light's shining on. Yeah, things are good. How do you get people to shine that light? As a coach, like, you have to really kind of expose that wound that at the surface might be a little pimple, but at the deeper levels, like a huge caldera.
Yeah. And it's giving themselves permission and giving ourselves permission to be radically honest and not be in a state that everything that comes out of our mouth is PG. And just the process is simple. We take non-emotional inventory first because we just want to look at the facts as they appear on paper. Like, this is where I'm at in my business. This is where I'm at in my relationships. This is where I'm at in this.
Yeah.
And it's almost like an autopsy of sorts. The person doing an autopsy, they have no connection to the person. So there's no emotions that are mixed up into that. They're doing the job. That's the first step. But then we introduce the emotions, because we are human beings, and the emotions are feedback mechanisms that can be used as leverage. And so we look at the results and the facts of like where you are in your life, and then like, how do you really feel about those? Not how you feel about those when you're in your PG state, but like, what is your internal narrative? Like, what's going on? And that expression is a healthy release of honesty and clarity. Like, just expressing where we are is. I've worked with people who haven't like been really real about their feelings about what's going on in their life for years, man.
Yeah.
And you can tell it like it's a burden on them. So once we take non-emotional inventory, then we look at the feelings, and then we say, okay, then we have some clarity of like, okay, what do you want from this? And
Yeah.
it sounds so rudimentary, but what do you want? It's a really hard question for people to answer. A lot of times people will tell you, well, I don't want this, I don't want that, but what do you actually want?
Yeah.
And once we can get there, then we can start carving a path towards that.
Yeah, totally. And I love how you mentioned the permission thing, because for me, there's always been two levels where if I have someone that I really value give me permission, where they're like, dude, you can do this, then it's like, oh, now I believe in myself. But then you'll also see like Gary Vee or someone on social media where it's like, you don't need anyone to give you permission, go and do it. But we
Yeah.
all know that like, we're impacted a lot as children, where maybe we didn't have the permission or the validation from like a parent or something. So how do you kind of distinguish the two? Because if someone's working with you, like, they definitely value your opinion. If you give them permission, they're going to go. But then I'm sure are there other times when they just need permission from themselves, maybe?
Well, it's always, the end game is always permission for themselves.
Yeah.
Now, through that process, it might seem like I'm giving them permission, but a great coach and mentor, they're just a facilitator, really.
Right.
Like, they're not, like, I never want my clients to rely on me. Like, the stuff that I love is to be able to help facilitate my clients to give themselves permission. So that becomes a new operating procedure. So next time they brush up against something, yeah, we might have a conversation, but they might also say, you know what? This is what happened last time, and all I have to do is just all my power, stand tall in this, and give myself permission. So it's always an internal game. How we get there might look differently on the outside, but it's always ourselves.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of, I want to get into the most recent book you released, The Leap of Your Life. And it's like, sometimes you need someone to push you, but at the end of the day, like, you got to jump. And
Yes.
so how do you, with people who, there's such a big thing on like, go chase your dreams. Entrepreneurship is great. Don't work for the man, but not everyone can do that. And not everyone's going to work the same way. Not everyone's fulfilled. And so how does someone distinguish areas in the different pillars of their life where they do need to take that leap, and are there areas where they just need to realign and re-strategize?
Yeah, I tend to believe that, a lot of people come to me and they say that they're looking for clarity, that they need clarity. And part of what I offer, deliverable, is definitely clarity. But almost like the permission thing, was it that I came along and provided the clarity for them, or did they have that clarity inside of them all along? Were they getting hits of their intuition on a daily basis, weekly basis? Were they looking at circumstances and synchronicities come in that align with that patterns over time, but they were so stuck in their environment and in the chaos and in the trenches of their own life that they couldn't really listen to the clarity? And then I came in, extracted them from their environment, gave them space to actually breathe, and then the clarity was like right there.
Yeah.
And I believe it's the latter, right? Like, people always have that clarity. It's just a matter of allowing it to come up and then being honest with it. And so I just did a post on this morning, because let's face it, there's a benefit to saying I'm searching for clarity. Tell me, well, I got to search for clarity. I need clarity. Once I get clarity, I'll start. Because if you're always looking for clarity, it means that you don't have to actually take that first courageous step. So with that said, I believe that, you mentioned it earlier, but self-awareness, like I would never want someone to say, like, to see my lifestyle, that I'm location independent, that I coach and train people, that I get paid to have incredible podcasts, that I write books, and say, I want that because he wants that and he's lit up by that. I always want to find the vein in someone that does that same energy that I get from what I do. I want to find that in their life as well. So however that looks like, and you're absolutely right. Now, but there's also reality. The way that we work is completely changing. The old models and structures of driving to an office, and being at a company for not even 5 years anymore, is changing rapidly. By 2020, so next year, over 40% of the economy is going to be freelance, entrepreneurial, collaborative, or project-based.
You said 40%?
40%.
Wow, that's incredible.
The reason I share those statistics is because, okay, you might, like, self-awareness is tricky. Like, there's this whole thing of like, oh, like not everybody should be an entrepreneur. I agree, but everybody can learn entrepreneurial skill sets that's going to increase their value in whatever organization they're in, and equip themselves with skill sets that are not going to leave them being held hostage to some employer loyalty, which doesn't exist, but take ownership and say, hey, I have all of these skills. If this company gets bought out tomorrow and I'm on the street, guess what? I can carve my own path. There's a deep level of freedom that comes with that. So I don't care what the surface area looks like, whether you work for yourself or somebody else, but it's about taking that ownership of your ability to produce income, produce results, produce lifestyle, whether that's supporting you or supporting others, that I think transcends however it's packaged.
Yeah. And one of the best things I've ever heard on a podcast is that you're the CEO of your own life. And so realizing that on social media, like, that is your business card, you are a brand. And even if you're working for yourself, you still work for your clients. And when you work for Amazon, your client is the manager above you, maybe, or Jeff Bezos. But I find that super interesting, in that so many people are going to be freelance, and just how that's shifting.
Dude, in 10 years, the idea of driving to an office that is paying an inordinate amount for a commercial piece of real estate, where there's bosses and coworkers and meetings all on location, that's gonna seem very archaic. Like, that's not gonna be reality anymore. And so, with that said, like, we have to have some foresight. Now, I always tell, like, people who are stuck in their job, let's have some foresight. Let's get out of your little bubble and think 10 years down the line. What skill sets do you need today? Do you need to work on today that are going to make you more valuable?
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, entrepreneurial skill sets is going to include a lot of sales, a lot of leadership, a lot of hard work. And I live in Seattle, so every day there's a new Amazon building going up, and I'm like, so many of those people can do their jobs without that $7 billion building and everything that is required to house everything with that. And it's super interesting that more people aren't shifting that way. I guess it is based off the stats that you just gave me. We've talked a lot about clarity, and for me, I have found the most clarity whether I'm doing something that is meditative or meditating. How big is that in what you do with your clients, and then how do you get people to find a practice that works for them?
Absolutely. Number one is that you won't find clarity in the chaos, and you won't find clarity in the endless stimulus. And so one of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves is that we don't have enough time. I mean, I hear it every day. I've said it in the past week for sure. That's why when we came on and you said I had a million things to do, I immediately shifted out of that, because if I reaffirm that, then I'm reaffirming that I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I help people do, it doesn't matter where you are, even if you're in a state of survival and you are working 16-hour days, we can find a slither of time. It might be 10 minutes, but damn, if you're able to use those 10 minutes qualitatively to create just a little window of space in your life, that's when you're going to get the clarity. Now, as you go on, the idea is to create more of that. Earlier, I teach a model that has a lot of front-end structure, discipline, routine, habits, intensity, all of that stuff. And then on the other side, there's a lot of white space, nothingness, detachment. There's like, and they're really both, they serve each other beautifully. A lot of people live in this middle ground where they don't get the benefits of structure, discipline, routine, habits, which is like results in a short period of time. But they also don't, because of that, they tell themselves they don't have enough time for things like meditation and space, et cetera, et cetera. So I would encourage one to find small pockets of space in your day today and just go check on your phone. How much time are you spending on Instagram? How much time are you spending on Netflix? The average American worker is productive 2.1 hours out of a 8-hour day. So let's just think about 2.1 out of 8. There's a lot of time that is being lost that can be used very productively to create powerful clarity, to get self-awareness, all the stuff that we're talking about. And second, there is no right tool. All of these are just tools. It's like you said, it's about finding the tool that's in alignment for you.
Yeah.
So my most powerful, I call them just access points for me, even though I love meditation, I love flow tanks, I love all of that and do meditation every day and flow tanks once a week. Nature for me is my instant path to clarity.
Yeah.
So when I get in nature, within about 10 minutes, I exhale, my body feels looser, the problems that I came in with start to dissipate. So we all have that. Somebody out there, it might be yoga, somebody out there, it might be walking, somebody out there, it might be meditation or journaling. And if you haven't found yours yet, try one for the next 30 days and do it with enough intention where you can actually see if it resonates.
Yeah.
People say, Tommy, I tried journaling. Well, you did it twice and you were checking Instagram while you were doing it. Of course, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like, do it with intention and set up the environment to go deep enough into it. And when you start to uncover those access points, you get clarity on demand. Personally, I can go, and I do every morning, to create clarity on the mountain, or to create clarity in the workout, or to create clarity in the flow tank, because it's like an onion. Like, clarity is a process. It's an evolution. And that's where the practice comes in.
Yeah. I love how you said the I don't have enough time thing, and then you talk to things like Netflix, like Instagram. And I think that mindset of I don't have enough time is just going to breed not having enough time. I love the idea of scarcity, and I feel like this aligns really well with people who are taking that leap and going out and doing their own thing, where if you have this mindset of I don't have enough time for meditation, then it's I don't have enough clients to do what I need to do, or I don't have enough skill set to do what I need to do. How do you get people out of that? Is that just a shift of scarcity to abundance, where everything then becomes I have enough time, there is enough clients, there is enough skill set, there is enough belief?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% perception, but it's also rooted in reality. Right now, I'm working with someone who's a first-time director, and he's having issues raising financing. And capital, finding money is like, I forget what the stat is. Something about $18 trillion a day passes through the economy, switches hand in a 24-hour period. So is it that there's not enough out there? Like, he's telling me, like, you can't actually tap into just a little bit of that 18 trillion, or is it that you haven't shifted your mindset to start looking for the people, the places, the opportunities that are going to attract some of that? Yeah. So it goes with time, it goes with money, it goes with clients, it goes with everything. People tell me the coaching market is saturated. And if you believe that a market is saturated, and like, let's face it, there's, I don't know, 7 billion people on the planet, 4 billion, which are going to be connected by 2050. In most industries, unless it's super emerging like AI, but even that, you can seem like things are saturated because there's just a lot of numbers. But if you actually believe that it's set, a lot of it is saturated with low quality, low intention, uncommitted people towards those things. But if you believe that the market is saturated, you're not going to put yourself out there. You're not going to be consistent, because what's the point? Well, if my core belief is that it's saturated, there's nothing I can do to overcome that. So you're right. It's a complete rewiring of, hey, am I thinking in scarcity, which is really the old model, or am I thinking in a place of abundance? Am I really, and it's not talking about it. It's more being about it. Yeah. When you operate out of a place of abundance. Now, what is the practice of abundance? The stuff that we just talked about, creating space. Because in space, you actually realize that we do live in an abundant world. That if you win, it doesn't mean I lose. That if you win, it just means that there's more to go around, than I can win too.
Yeah.
And that's when we have to start. So the simplest one, the most practical one is because this is the most obvious, stop telling ourselves that we don't have enough time.
Yeah.
create a new language. My language is that I create time for the priorities in my life.
Mm.
And that's 10 times more empowering, because if something comes in that's not a priority, I can be very discerning. I can make a quick decision, because indecision becomes a dream killer. And when we're unfocused and we don't know where we're going, then we say yes to everything. But I would start there. And if you're telling yourself you don't have enough time, just like you said, it's the last time, like think about the last time you were rushing somewhere. You were late, you were like trying to figure out the Google Maps, and it was like 7 minutes late, and you're rushing. That's a scarcity mindset. You're not clear in that space. You're not able to connect with people in that space. You're not thinking of big ideas in that space. You're in literally time scarcity.
Yeah.
And your heart rate is jacked up. It's a horrible place to be in. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of people live, because they bought into the assumption that that's where they have to live, because that's where they have lived in their identity, and that anything outside of that is different and scary, not possible.
I love that. I create time for the priorities in my life. Like over my shoulder, people won't be able to see this listening, but it's like, those are my goals. And being able to have the mindset of I create time for the opportunities in my life. Now I'm going to look for, when things come to me, is this an opportunity for the priorities in my life? Like, is this a priority? And same thing as believing, like, is there enough clients? You're going to look for opportunities. Like, oh, there's an opportunity for a client interaction. When you were talking about how the market's saturated, it brought me to, like, I grew up playing baseball and I wanted to be a pro baseball player. There probably isn't a more saturated market in America than 12-year-olds playing baseball. But as a kid, you don't have the programming as to like, oh, this is so saturated, you're not going to make it. Everyone's like, yeah, go you. And so when you talk about as a coach, there's 7 billion people, and depending on your business model, you need 15, 20 people to thrive.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're telling me you can't get 15 or 20 people to really buy into you as a person. Like we have 15, 20 friends that, love us.
Yeah.
And so to that point, when you're coaching people and people believe like, oh, like there's not enough clients, you spoke to something where it's like, there's a lot of low quality coaches.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, there is the reality that you have to be good at what you do.
Absolutely.
And so how do you have that conversation with someone where they're like, they have this undeniable belief where like, I'm going to go do this. And it's like, well, like you really can't operate on someone's heart. You don't have that skill set.
Yeah. And that's where I teach people to identify and create a real systemized blueprint on acquiring skills that is going to make them better at their quote unquote craft or the thing that they're doing. For example, to your what you just said, one of my goals and one of my targets is to be a New York Times bestseller. The truth is, today I'm not good enough for that. I'm not, but I don't see that as like a thing about me or how I'm like not like self-worth or it's bad. I'm just like, for the right person. Now this is where Carol Dweck's mindset becomes very crucial. I know I'm not good enough today for it, but I have a growth mindset, which means that today I wrote 1,600 words. Tomorrow I'll write 1,000. I got a call with someone who helps me flesh out ideas next week who's wrote bestsellers. So as a growth mind-oriented person, I actually see that as a good thing because I can get better at it today and tomorrow, which is ultimately going to lead to the result. If you have a fixed mindset, you say, you know what, my skills are basically, my skills and my talents, they're capped. Who I am is who I am. And that's the great separator. Do you have a fixed mindset? Do you have a growth mindset? So in terms of how you practically do this, what I teach is that when we set goals and targets in my programs, on a quarterly basis, we say just one. What is the one skill that during the next quarter is going to amplify your ability to, like, let's say those are your goals in the whiteboard. We look at all your goals and we ask, okay, what is that one skill that you can commit to, that you're going to have a game plan for, that you're going to do at least twice a week, you're going to be spending time, energy, and attention on it, that's going to make you better at your craft. So if you're a personal trainer, well, list those out. Do a brain dump of all the possible skills. If you're a coach, list them all out. If you're a podcaster, if you sell real estate, if you're in sales, just list them all out. And then take a step back and say, okay, highlight the number one that you're going to focus on. And not just, people will say, well, I'm going to get better at marketing, Tommy. Well, that's like saying the Milky Way galaxy. Marketing is a vast world.
Yeah.
What specifically are you going to get better at? Oh, I'm going to get better at writing email copy. Okay, now we're onto something, because now that I have clarity on that, I can say, okay, who's out there? What courses, trainers, free information? What practices can I do? And this is a real one that I did. And when I was wanting to get better email copywriting, one of the things that I did every day was handwrite old sales letters to learn how to write influentially. So that's just an example, right? Because going back to the market is saturated, I have a fitness background too. The status quo for a lot of fitness trainers is like to show up and come up with random workouts at the last second. I go to gyms often because I drop in when I travel, and there's personal trainers on their phones. You can, just by a little bit more effort, you can stand out and become someone who's highly valuable. And you might not have all the skills that you need today. People don't care about that.
Right.
They care that you're committed to them, that you're going to show up powerfully, that you're not going to show up at the last second or be late or cancel on them. Like all of those intangibles, for the right person, they're going to make you stand out. It's what Seth Godin calls being the linchpin.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be the best, then why are you doing it? Now, personally, am I ever going to be the best podcaster? Well, I don't even know how that could ever be quantified. It doesn't matter. It means that when I show up to podcast, I'm showing up with the deep-rooted intention to hold space, to be present, to not think about the email I have to send, and to really honor the person in front of me. That's the linchpin mentality, and that's what's going to create results.
Absolutely. And I think what you were talking about too is like the one thing. What's the one thing? The same way Tom Brady throws thousands of footballs a day, or a golfer takes 1,000 shots with a specific iron. What's the one thing that you can do that's going to make that skill better? And I'm interested on your take, is if this is a season where it's like, all right, this season, this is my one thing.
Yeah.
Because for someone who's just starting out, you kind of don't know what you don't know, where you might want to go in, like, for example, personal training. There's a whole lot of different ways to train people. There's different types of people that you want to train. So there is a little bit of self-discovery, self-awareness as to what am I good at? What do I like doing? Because sometimes those things don't align. And then like, where can I be strategic as to like, there actually are 1,000 people that are writing books on this. How could I add in something like of a Venn diagram toward now I'm coming at it from a different angle?
I agree, man. 100%. And it becomes a process. And when things become a process and a practice, we release that pressure. Yeah, you're not going to be the best tomorrow, but you can still do things today that are going to make you better. And we all just want to get a little bit better. Like when we're progressing in life, whether that's in our business and our craft, or just we're going somewhere with our lives, that's really all that we want.
Yeah.
And part of that is exactly what you just said, like identifying those and asking those questions and trying enough things to know what are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that I actually enjoy doing? And where can I find that Venn diagram in between?
Yeah, totally. And to that point, it's where that 1% comes in, right? Where you just want to get a first down every single day. And then eventually you're going to drop that 60-yard bomb in and see like a real big season of growth. Is that kind of what you've seen as well with your clients?
Totally, man. It's this kind of like dream big, dream in the clouds, spend time there, but then be in the dirt and just take one step. It's kind of those two worlds to me are really one and the same. The problem is some people living the dreaming and they never actually take a step. And then others are so in the trenches that they're not connected to something powerful. So the steps actually become mundane. And there's a beautiful balance between those two.
Yeah.
But consistency, my dude, Trent Shelton, was on the podcast and he said something to the effect of, words lie, actions can lie too. Consistency tells the truth. And I was like, dude, you just hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Everything I've ever done, the more consistent I've been, the more growth I've seen. Like really at the end of the game, it's just action and consistency with quality. One of my favorite Andy Warhol quotes, I won't get it totally right, but it's just like, continue to create, let everyone decide if it's good or bad. And while they're deciding, create more and like take that action.
I love that because it means showing up over and over and over again. And you talked about consistency. And one thing is that we live in a world where intensity is sold a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, you're going to come to this retreat. You're going to write your book in 3 days, or, you're going to get perfect abs in 6 weeks. Listen, nothing necessarily wrong with it. Intensity can be a really nice jumpstart. The problem is that consistency builds the foundation.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will look at my life and they'll say like, dude, you're super intense. You're writing thousands of words a day. You're always hiking on the mountain, going intense. You're doing all of these things. And they don't understand that the reason I'm able to add intensity is because I'm hyper consistent for years
Yeah.
and years. So
Yeah.
the intensity actually fuels me. But for a lot of people who don't have the foundation of consistency, what happens is they add in the intensity and then they crumble after that because it's too much. It's like the person who wants to wake up tomorrow and they're going to change 11 habits. And sure, it might last a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. But then one day they revert back and they quit because there's just too much change at once.
Yeah. To that point, you spoke about dreaming big and being big in the clouds. And I've had this thought of mental flexibility where you can't achieve that which you like don't believe is actually possible.
Yeah.
So someone might be like, oh, I'm going to be a billionaire. Well, it's like, you don't even believe you can make $100,000 to that point where someone's like, oh, I'm going to lose 100 pounds. Well, you got to believe that you can lose 10 pounds. And so I think that's where that consistency piece part evolves as well, where I'll be like, oh man, I'm not like as disciplined as like Tony Robbins or someone who's extremely disciplined. But then I got to remind myself that just like my skills as a baseball player, it's going to continue to come up and up.
Yeah.
It's not like a up, and it's not like a square. It's more of that bell curve or whatever.
Yeah, and that within that bell curve, it's like up, mini breakdown, which is when a lot of people quit, and then boom, a new level. Okay, oh shit, I'm in another breakdown. I'm in a plateau. And when we take a step back, it's almost like looking at the stock market for 30 years. If you're looking at one small slither in the 1930s or in 2008, well, you're going to think the stock market was just always going down because your perspective is in the trenches. But if you take a step back, you realize, wow, during that whole time, it actually went up this much. And it's the same thing with our habits and our goals. It's never going to be linear. There's going to be moments of plateau where you're questioning, I was like, is the needle moving at all here? And then boom, you get a breakthrough. You got to be patient in the plateau, or you're in a breakdown. That's where you need some faith and trust. Now, within those, there's moments where it's like, well, hopefully you have a good circle that you can have real world feedback and understand, like, okay, when you're in the breakdown, maybe there is something that you're doing incorrectly that you can pivot, but it doesn't mean that you have to just quit everything because you're having a breakdown. So results are never linear, but showing up every single day is a way that we bulletproof ourselves from the ups and downs and the fluctuations.
Yeah. In a way, could you almost say that there's multiple leaps that you have to take? Like you take the initial big leap and then you're like, oh, shit's going down. I need to take another leap. And it's like that constant battle against your shadow self where it's telling you like, don't do that. And that's that fear and that's that resistance. And you just got to like jump into that.
Well, as you increase, I'll just say like it's success, achievement, results, or just your capacity, you got to fill that capacity with more challenge so you can adapt to a new level. Otherwise, you become stagnant and stale.
Same principle as strength training.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I love physicality, because if you put me and somebody untrained on a mountain, because my capacity is much bigger, I'm able to go much harder and actually experience much more pain, which in essence allows me to recover and adapt faster, which improves my performance overall. They're limited. They might have a really hard time, but they can't access that deeper intensity because their capacity just doesn't let them.
Right.
And so it's important to recognize that as you increase your capacity, you got to add more challenge in there, but you got to be practice discernment. If your capacity is this big, well, then maybe your $1 billion goal, we need to temper that down. I do that with clients. It's very individual. Some people are really inspired by that big number, but I always got to temper it down and say, okay, how are we going to make those first $5,000?
Yeah.
Like let's get some wins in the bag and build that confidence because what happens when we set a goal that's so far, we're going to focus on the space in between, and the space between here and $1 billion might seem like
it's hard to make momentum.
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. So then you had a note somewhere on here. I'm going to find it. So you were writing, the first book you wrote was Unresolution, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So before then, were there other books that you tried to write and you came up against that wall and that barrier, and how did you break through that? Because I got to imagine the first book has got to be the hardest. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. And the first one, you want to prove to yourself that you can do it. There's definitely multiple iterations, but honestly, if I'm being radically honest, in all of those prior iterations, I was interested in the idea of writing a book, but I wasn't committed to the actual process of it. And there's 2 worlds between those 2 places.
Absolutely. Have you read Turning Pro?
Oh, dude, it's my Bible. I walk around with Pressfield stuff all the time.
So anytime I run into situations where I'm wanting to be the addict, like I
Yep.
think about when he talks about he's like his writing and how he just wanted to revert back into like it's out of my control, so I can't do anything. And that's what so many
Yes.
people do is addictive things, and those are just symptoms of not wanting to face what they're actually trying to face.
Absolutely. Turning Pro and War of Art, two, or was it Art of War or War of Art? I always confuse those. But those two by Pressfield, I mean, I literally keep those in my backpack because when I face the resistance, which is at least once a day, I
Yeah.
can one quick passage and I'm like, okay, I'm
There,
good.
I'm ready
This
to
is what
go.
I'm supposed to feel. Let's go.
Yeah. What does your daily routine look like so that people can kind of get a sense of like you're obviously not always super high energy, super high charge, super
No
motivated.
way.
I think that's what people get on social media is like they always have abs, they're always motivated, they're always in Thailand, and it's like it's just not the case. And it's the daily mundane, which sometimes I feel like I miss. Like I go on vacation, I'm like, man, I just want to get back to like where I know I'm meditating at this time and I know I'm working out at this time.
Totally. Well,
What's
you're talking about the contrast between radical novelty and routine, which is like when we have too much routine, we seek radical novelty. When we have too much radical novelty, it's chaos, and we seek routine. It's this beautiful back and forth. No, and so I always, Lisa Nichols has a quote. She says, "You want to make me extraordinary because it lets you off the hook." What she means
mm,
by that is that we tend to look at people who have achieved more than us, or maybe have similar things that we're going after, and give
and
them like extraordinary superhuman powers.
they're born with it.
Yeah, exactly. Like Tommy is just so disciplined. He wakes up at 4:30. Like there's no issues. He's like that all day, and it's like that's not true. So, and again, in a social media land, you got to be very careful. That's why I limit my social media and I'm very strategic with it. But the way that I like to operate, to answer your question, is earlier I talked about these kind of two worlds and these two spectrums. So I like to front end my days with a lot of structure, a lot of discipline, a lot of routines, a lot of habits. All of that stuff is front loaded. So on the back end of my day, there's a lot of white space, there's a lot of nothingness, there's a lot of downtime and a lot of regeneration. Now, I'm blessed to be an entrepreneur and have complete autonomy of my schedule. But even when I was working for other people, I would still find ways to create a lot of routine, but then also create a lot of disconnection and unplugging. So I like to live in those two worlds
Yeah.
because in the intensity, I get results and I get purposeful fulfillment from doing work that matters to me. And in the nothingness and in the white space, I just call it white space. And it was funny because I have a group, it's like a hybrid coaching mastermind group, and I shared my calendar with them the other day, and it was full, totally full. What they didn't see that I trained on them later was it was full with a lot of it was full with my morning ritual, it was full with my physical workout, it was full with in the afternoons there was this block from 3:30 to 5:30 that was called white space. And they didn't understand. They're like, what is this white space thing? And it said it's literally time for me to do anything that I desire. That could be rest, that could be going to Barnes and Noble and going just reading a book for an hour, that could be, it could be literally anything. And it's in that, but it's not, I can't be in a state of production and work.
Yeah.
And it's non-negotiable. And even when I was releasing my book, I was on a lot of podcasts. It was an intense season. Nobody touched that time, because if I don't have that time, then that's where I start going into law of diminishing returns.
Right.
Routine is great until it starts to become a burden. Structure is great until it starts to become a burden. Discipline is great until that's all you know. And so you have to be able to balance those out. So that's how I structure my days. A lot in the front end, all my morning rituals and stuff on the front end. And from a business component, all my creative work at the front end, because creative work is the most important, it requires the most willpower. Put that at the front end. The second phase of the day is more marketing. And that would be like stuff like this, where I'm like out, whether doing interviews or creating campaigns. And then the end of the day, when it's my lowest energy from a cognitive component, email tasks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The big issue with entrepreneurs is that they do the email and tasks at the front of the day when they should be doing their most important work, and then wonder why they don't have willpower for their most important work.
Yeah, totally. I'm always seeing this through the lens of again, like strength training, where it's like you wouldn't do your back squat or deadlift at the end of
That's what I'm saying.
your workout. And
Yeah.
and to your point too, it's like you can go as hard as you can recover from. And obviously people are going to have a different capacity to go hard. Some people can do 10 push-ups and they're gassed and they need a nap. Some people can do 1,000 before they need a nap. And so to your point, it's like some people can work 16 hours, but then the next day they're going to be effective for 11 and then 8. And then their body's going to be like, screw you, man. shutting you down. Same way as when you get injured. And I think
If
that's a thing that people are starting to realize now. Maybe I just only live in a social media world and friendship world where people are like mental health, recovery,
Yeah,
all these things. But I want to believe that that's where society's going.
I love that you said that, because high octane, like someone like Usain Bolt, like, and I like just using extreme examples because everybody knows them, but that dude, he sprints. His training is sprint specific. His race is 10 seconds. That dude is recovering all day
Yeah.
because he's high octane for a really small amount of time, which means that he needs massive recovery. And we can all take that principle with ourselves too. Is like, if we're putting a lot of intention into our work, I'm blessed to have an amazing fiance. If I wasn't in such a committed relationship, the truth is I would probably work on, I do a half day Saturdays of my choosing, but I would probably work Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
But the times when I've done that, how do you think I felt on Monday?
Terrible.
Yeah, I had we need the separation to feel the enthusiasm of stepping into it again. Even when you love your work, even when you're on purpose, there's always a law of diminishing returns. So recovery is, there was a quote by one of my fitness mentors, and they said, don't do the work if you're not willing to recover. Because in fitness, anybody can go hard,
right?
But are you willing to recover hard? And recovery isn't as sexy as doing the work. And in a social media hustle world, not a lot of people are talking about recovery in that sense of like how important it is. A lot of times people talk about recovery when it's too late. Like, oh, I'm burned out, now I should recover. Oh, my adrenals are screwed, now I should recover. No, how about you do that first and integrate it into your calendar and your day as much as you can, and then build the other pieces around that.
Yeah. From a marketing perspective, I'm always interested in how to make that part sexy, where it's like showing a picture of someone meditating, not as cool as someone doing like muscle ups, showing someone like even Andrew Luck, for example, like people are supportive when he throws 40 touchdowns in the year, not so supportive when he focuses on himself. And so like, I'm interested on your insight on ways to make things that aren't sexy on social media still sexy, or are the right people going to gravitate to your message?
Yeah, I think from a core just philosophy component, it's like, if you're able to tap, whenever I create content or whatever, I'm either creating it for the person that I used to be, who had the same problem with the people that I'm looking to connect with. So it's very easy. I just take myself, when I was let's say I'm talking to someone who's very off purpose. I just go to literally driving in my car in a commute to this internship at Smith Barney. I'm going to do 300 cold calls. What am I feeling in that state? And so my content is going to speak to that person. Or literally, now that I've built some of an audience, I look at the comments and look at the feedback and what people are saying, and I speak in their language. So that to me is kind of from a philosophical level what I always do. And then there is this thing in marketing where it's like, there's a hook component. Like, if you want to bring someone into your world, it may not be the system that you're going to use to get to their solution, but it may be enough to get them aware of something else.
Yeah.
So it's not about clickbait or anything like that, but it's about at least capturing their attention and curiosity and getting them into your world. And then when they're in your world, then you can give them, now that you have their attention, now you can give them some of that real deeper stuff. And so I think it's a balance between those. Trust me, I've had marketers say like, dude, you're too deep. You got to give people more of what they want, or what they think they need. And, for me, it all goes back to integrity.
Yeah.
So you don't need to build a massive tribe. Kelvin Kelly, 1,000 true fans. That's really all you need. And I'd rather speak to those people who value it, who see the picture of a meditation and they're like, okay, that might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but that first line is exactly how I'm feeling.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. It's kind of like the vitamins in the chocolate, or something to that aspect. Is there anything that you're working on, like in the future? Are you trying to write a new book? Is there what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I'm in this. I'm in ideation phase, and I'm just kind of pulling into things that I'm very curious about, the things that I feel like people need and I want to write about, and things that I'm passionate about. So I'm in that process right now. And after I wrote my last book, I went through like a 7-year cycle of intensity, and then I was like, I needed time to disconnect and unplug.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it was what I call like a winter season of introspection. I got off social. I stopped like responding to so much stuff, which was hard because I like to be there, but I needed time to like recover.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
and like for
100%.
ambitious people, even strategically, even when you insert recovery, you like sometimes you need a disconnect. So right now I'm in that ideation phase and having conversations and just journaling and being open and seeing what's going to hit.
Yeah, because I got to imagine for you as an author, you are going to write about as you evolve. I was talking to one of my clients who's a comedian, and he was a teacher, and now he's like, how do I evolve so that my audience evolves, so that my message and everything is evolving with it?
Yeah.
And I think it sounds like you're kind of in that same phase. And I think it just speaks to kind of what we've talked about this entire time, where it's like, keep growing.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll be able to help people at the canopy level. And then I forget how the rainforest works, but there's 4 levels
Yeah.
to it. And
Totally.
yeah,
And
super.
people are going to write you in their in the right seasons. They're going to find what you've created that's going to be in alignment with that.
Yeah.
You know, like The Leap was a very intense book. The first line was, "What are you waiting for?" So to somebody who's not in growth mode, they probably read that first page and they're like, "Screw this guy."
Yeah.
But I wasn't speaking to the person who doesn't want to grow. I was speaking to the person who's actually really frustrated and know it's time for a change and know the time for a change was 6 months ago and they still haven't done anything. To that person, the "what are you waiting for" line, they're like, okay, well, this guy isn't messing around. I might
Yeah.
not like it, but let me see what he has to say.
Yeah. And they're hooked. And to that point, it's like having people love you and having people like the polarity. I feel like that's
Yeah.
another thing we've kind of talked about and touched on. It's just the parasympathetic, the sympathetic, the recovery, the intensity, the people loving you, the people hating you. Tommy, I want people to find you and take value out of the content the same way that I have. So links to your website, the books that you have on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, where can people find you so that they can get fired up from you as well?
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. And if this resonated, best place is we have the Resist Average Academy podcast, which we go just like conversations like this. We go deep and really go deep into people's stories of adversity, resilience, and then real world tactical ways that you can grow. So we kind of release this extraordinary, superhuman thing that we tend to project on people and
Yeah.
get them to know them on a deep level. And then the books you can find. The latest one is Leap of Your Life. So if you're someone who knows that there's been a change inside of you, but you just haven't taken that first step, that's a perfect wake up call in the form of a book. You can get that on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Audible now.
Awesome. Yeah, the Audible is a great way to do it. Just signing up and you get that one free credit. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
I recently grabbed the last two, the most recent two, the 1% and Leap of Your Life. So I'm super excited to dig into those as well.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate that.
Well, Tommy, thank you again so much. Have an awesome rest of your day. Hopefully that white space is fantastic.
It's coming up, man. Deep appreciation, and thank you for having me on, man.
All right, take it easy. Before I let you go, I just want to thank you guys all for listening to today's podcast. I think one thing that I still take away from this conversation and from continuing to follow him and from the books I've read from him is that if you want to be great at something, it's not just a matter of committing to it for a week or committing to it for a few months. When he talks about wanting to be a really good author, he's dedicating entire months, entire seasons to learning that one skill and honing that one craft. And when I look at myself or when I work with clients, I just think, man, if you were to go all in onto something for 3 months and spend 8 hours a day on that one thing, how much more would you grow? How much better would you be in that 3 month time? People see these 3 month transformations, and I'll just use fitness as an example. Sometimes people are just genetic freaks and they're able to make that skip, or there's luck. But the thing that isn't luck is hard work. And if you put in 3 months of just pure dedication to whatever it is that you're trying to do, you'll be amazed at what that transformation is. One last thing before I let you go. I know I already said that, but one last thing is if you love today's podcast, be sure to tag Tommy and I. Just let us know that you're listening. Go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating and review. That way we know that people are loving the podcast and we can get more people on like Tommy to inspire you guys all. Other than that, that's all I got. Hope you guys all have an awesome day. Thank you for listening to the Down Dog Athletics Podcast.